I'd like to introduce Sally Annett, whose presentation is Meta-Representation, Contemplation and Consciousness. I'm not going to say too much, there was some blurb thing that you signed up for. Sally is going to talk you through it. But Sally is an artist and producer based in the UK, and her specialist interest is in the intercultural intersections between art, science and religion. So,
hi, can everybody hear me? Everybody hear okay? The presentation this evening will be in two parts. So the first part will be concentration, and the second part will be contemplation. And I'm going to crack on because time is quite tight. So contemplation seats are about a wider body of my work arts practice. And they focus on the intersection between art, science and religion, which can be quite difficult. This particular project is funded, and the research is funded by the Arts Council of England. All the images on the screen are mine, and I work a lot in intervention. The aspirations are looking at the interconnectivity of the disciplines, so examining the contemporary and future implications and complexities of language and society. Without shared languages, including the pragmatics and subtler nuances of belief and faith, whether delivered by priest or scientist, this could prove difficult. The methodology is collaborative and post-disciplinary, using multimedia formats, and I use the human body as much as possible. As there's more than 7 billion of us, it seems like quite a good medium. The existing conceits and biases are that priests and scientists speak very specialist languages and hold, depending on your cultural background, the potential to answer the big questions in life. The world is split into intellectually superior materialist empiricist monotheists or monoatheists and intellectually compromised religious or spiritually guided pantheists. There's a conflict dialogue which has determined that the two disciplines are historically separate and is seemingly deliberately promoted by an aggressively atheist lobby and is a 20th century construct, and this varies greatly depending on where you are culturally in the world. Religion has traditionally been the patron of the arts, and there's been a large shift in funding towards science and digital patronage as new technologies emerge. Why does it matter? Well, an example is Prozac and Medicinal, probably other brands are available. Big business is brought into public consciousness, creating a paradigm which makes Marx's opiate of the masses seem quite quaint, and a paradigm of consciousness is commercially, palpably up for grabs. An atheist capitalist society is potentially a cold and heartless place for the unsuccessful, and is the resurgence of fundamentalist religious beliefs globally linked to the demise of communism and the loss of political voice for the poor and culturally or ideologically dispossessed? The results and findings, which link quite nicely into Annett's and Jean-Marc's work, I think, as a need to examine the aesthetics as well as the ethics of contemporary artistic, scientific and religious process. Most people hold a dualist perspective. I think in this room there will be a bias on perspective, but a lot of people happily carry two completely separate belief systems simultaneously, believing both in God or a religious system and an evolution or a scientific system. The aesthetics and methodologies and privileges of artists and scientists and priests are traditional in their separatist, cloistered and patriarchal environs, and the languages used by each sector are incredibly specific and inaccessible to many, and can be used to either elevate or intimidate. 6 key focuses have emerged: the aesthetics of scientific process, consciousness, which we'll touch on with this piece of work tonight, problematic dialogue surrounding religion and gender, women's rights, the environment and climate change, which is actually the linking point between religion and science because of the concept of stewardship of the land and the specific nature of language. In the artistic practice, the key themes are reflection, pilgrimage, secular or religious, nature and the environment, and ritual and play. And this piece tonight looks at ritual. So the actual blurb for tonight was Contemplation seeks meta-representation, contemplation and ordinary consciousness. And it looks critically at the links between alphabet, number, language and self-conscious reflection as methods of altering consciousness, which is again heavily linked to ritual in the widest sense of the word. An idiosyncratic feature of human consciousness appears to be our capacity to have thoughts about thoughts, beliefs about beliefs, or speculation about speculation. generally termed meta-representation, again a very broad description, but what is its function and what is its relation to language and memory? The expression of meta-representation relies completely on language of all varieties. This awareness is structured by various factors, some immediate, individual, physical, instinctive or advantageous, some which lead through action and external process to a longer-term social collective advantage driven by belief. Now that could be religious or it could be governmental. There's so many forms. And the homeostasis occurs within the human body, but it also occurs culturally. In speaking and writing, we make manifest in the external world an internal concept or comprehension. Human consciousness in its normal state can be neurochemically altered, and our perceptions of the outside world may change radically. Our oldest Western alphabets are shared culturally, as are our languages and originally religious systems. All are constructs, and all are ultimately associations of sound and symbol with a shared abstract concept or idea. This capacity, and this is a difficult sentence to say, this capacity to make self-reflective consciousness and processes of storing and substantiating our internal subjective cognitive memories and beliefs externally by associating them with external and objective symbols, for example alphabetically, is a meta-representational ability, and it's linked to our need to predict. We construct our world with languages of different kinds, from MRI scanner image to tarot card. We attempt to create systems and pictures to predict and explain the outside world. We want to do this because we need to control our environment at a basic survival level. And we do this through knowledge, experiential databases and memory. So everything from big data to weather forecasting to your horoscope. The systems vary, but the intentions behind the instrumentalities remain constant and are linked to planning and strategy, and to an awareness of our mortality. So we build our world with languages. Our external reality is a sensory and cognitive illusion. Our senses and material self are in a state of constant flux, and it would be reasonable to suggest that so is our consciousness. Consciousness is fluid, it's flexible, we utilise lots of different levels, waking, sleeping, drugged, unwell, injured, but we shift emotional levels all the time and we change identities and personas all the time. Science tells us that the body tricks us into holding a dualist perspective, and we compartmentalise and separate body and mind. So contemplation itself. Synonyms: meditation, reflection, reverie, pondering. They're expansive words even when they're internalised, and often undervalued within our culture. Whereas concentration is absorption, combination, application. It's all compressing, compacting, narrowing, and it's highly valued in our current society. There's little to bridge the psychological and physical gaps. We lack sophisticated laws and understandings, but explore and devise entire paradigms to share and convey our experience. And I think in the arts we're especially guilty or successful at that. This presentation explores the results of a series of arts interventions which navigate these processes, and through contemplation explore the use of spoken word, symbol, number and ritual to structure a process of self-reflection. Drawing on both religious and scientific ideas, the piece would normally be performed in an external environment as a short walk, with viewpoints and texts and seats and chairs that you could sit on and contemplate in a natural environment. But you're asked here to participate in the next part by following the narrative and keeping your eyes closed. So what this piece of work actually does is attempt to categorise several different states of consciousness within a normal neurochemical range using a methodology which directs a sequence of thought processes from numbers 1 to 10 and specific questions to establish an internal conversation or dialogue with an inner voice. This is done in parallel with the questionnaires you've already completed. So contemplation seats number 1 to 11. Please ensure you're sitting comfortably. If we could dim the lights.
We are going to lower the lights now,
So when everybody's comfortable, if you'd all like to close your eyes, don't worry, you're all safe. So with each number spoken, I'd like you to imagine in your mind's eye that you stand up from where you are seated and move to sit in another chair. The first chair represents the body. the material, the physical you, the fabric or stuff of life. Question: how does your body feel today? Reflect upon your physical self, how it's changed over time and what it's gone through. Sit for a minute and feel the weight in your bones, the blood and water throwing through your circulatory and digestive systems, the air breathing in and out of your lungs, and the heat that your form is giving out. Sit with an awareness of these functions for a while. And change seats. The ego, the personality, the functioning self. The ego is the interface between your inner world and the external world and other people. It is how you present yourself to others, your style and your performance. Question: how do you present yourself to others today? Are you willful, willing, or will-less today? Sit for a while and contemplate the self you present today. And change seats. The third seat is data, responses, information, facts, theory, thinking, monitoring systems. Questions: your thought processes, information, data, problems and solutions. Are they too active? What are you thinking about today? Can you calm your thoughts? What thoughts are you addicted to? Sit for a while and observe your thoughts. And change seats. The fourth seat is emotions, desires, appetites, cycles, patterns, practice, operating systems, habits. Questions: how are you feeling emotionally, creatively? Are you feeling excited, active or calm? What are your desires? Sit and contemplate your desires without becoming carried away with them. And change seats. The fifth seat is the contemplative self. I, the driver. It represents beauty. Question: what do you find beautiful? Contemplate this for a while. And change seats. The sixth seat is strength, discrimination, control and judgment. Question: what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Are you truthful with yourself about them? And do you act on those truths? Contemplate this for a while. And change seats. The 7th seat is compassion, love, mercy and power. Question: do you have compassion for others? Do you have compassion for yourself? Do you love others and do you love yourself? Contemplate these things for a while. And change seats. The 9th seat is reason, information, form, structure, containment and design. Question: imagine the perfect structure of your life. How does it look? How would you build the pieces of it? What have you learned from the experiences which have made you unhappy? Contemplate this for a while. And change seats. The 10th seat is revelation, understanding, inspiration, chaos and concept. Question: what inspires you the most? What understanding of your life has been revealed through shock or surprise? Contemplate this. The 11th seat is the unknowable, the divine, the magical, the spiritual, the unquantifiable, the invisible. Question: what was the most magical moment of your life? In your mind's eye, return to the first chair in which you were seated. Feel the weight in your bones, the gaseousness of air in your lungs, the fluid in your blood and your stomach, and the heat emanating from your entire form and your physical body. And when you're comfortable, open your eyes. And if we could have the lights back on, gently at the back. Thank you. So, when people are ready. Are there any questions?
There are striking similarities the reasons or the applications to which you're putting them are based on quite particular categories and subjects you divided according to a sort of almost scientific aesthetic, the different components of our social realities and our internal realities. But you've got just to treat them in a way that is very simply mindfulness practice. Is that for you a way of gathering data or a way of using the data that you have?
Okay, if I'm really, really honest, the word mindfulness makes me want to yell the word vagina really loudly in public places. Because sorry everybody, I do feel that mindfulness is a Buddhist practice, and I can see its uses in corporate environments and in various group environments, but it's certainly not what this work is about.
No, I suppose I meant more in the way that it functions, and the fact that you dislocate yourself, which you're doing, asking us to adopt different positions, which are themselves almost secretions of particular functions of how we think about ourselves.
I think so. I'm definitely doing that. But I do try and step back from a bit, because I am tying it into alphabet, I am tying it into number, I am tying it into language. So there's a lot of work behind it. So
that's really evident in the way that you've taken them apart and categorised them and synthesised them down into particular categories. As well, I suppose, just as a second question, you mentioned in your presentation earlier this relationship between the way that we use the concepts that we have available. So you describe them as structures, and I suppose a simple way of saying that would be an ideology, although it comes with many associations, a structure of thought through which we interpret the world. Do you believe that there is an organic nature and evolution to these processes, so that when religion is handed down into ideologies of progress in the contemporary discourse, do you believe there is an organic evolution to these processes?
I think when on the slide where I sort of talk about the individual and collective advantage of this, I absolutely believe there's an evolutionary process to that, and I believe that consciousness is part of the process of an ongoing process of evolution.
Just to clarify this, so do you believe that these structures, although being organic, are conceptual tools to deal with conceptual environments in the same way that, say, a species would adapt to its environment and develop tools? We have developed conceptual tools to deal with conceptual landscapes.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily break them down as structures or systems, but I tend to look at them as constructs. So it's just the order of which it's whether you intend to make the tool or whether the tool's a happy accident as part of the process. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know that. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, observations?
Yes, in your PowerPoint right at the start, which I think may have come from your research project, which I took part in, I was interested to see your conflating monotheism with extreme materialism. Do you want to?
Well, that was a very provocative statement.
Yes, that's why I mentioned it.
Monoatheism, and which is why I think it varies culturally. So, depending on where you are in the world, your belief system is very different. And in Northern Europe and in America, even though we're largely secular governments and mindsets in countries culturally, there's a very different and very aggressive atheist scientific body in America, but it's counterbalancing sort of an upsurge in creationism and fundamental Christianity, which we just don't have in the UK. So everywhere is different, and I'm trying to that's a very provocative statement. I know who I'm speaking to here, and it's a generalisation, and you can pick apart each of those because it's empiricist, materialist, atheist. So I don't believe that everyone is homogenised into those statements. It's just two polarised statements.
Well, as a doubtful pantheist, I think I agree with your model. It's interesting that you put me up there, and I'd be interested to know what other people think about it.
Also, it's a conceit. It's something that again, when I handed out the questionnaires, it was interesting to see the number of people who say that they believe in God or are part of a religious organisation, and I expect it to be very low in this environment. Whereas if I'm dealing with my international students, it will be very high, but the level of education will be very similar. They'll all be master's level students, but they won't believe in evolution potentially because that's not what they're taught. And I feel that there needs to be a dialogue between the two groups because it has such serious impacts on women, for example. If you're not allowed to have contraception, that leads into the huge issues we have to face in the future, looking at population growth, climate change, wars over resources. So everything is politicised. So yeah, they are really important issues. And to just leave religion out of the debate doesn't help a lot of people, I think.
Do we have any final questions? Okay, thank you very much, Sally.
Thank you.
Everybody.